Welcome, everyone. I want to thank our guests for carving out time in the day to join us for this conversation. Together, we have six women with combined experience of over 120 years of professional experience in leadership, in navigating careers and challenges. And so we're hoping today we can have a good, fun, lively conversation to extract some insights on their experiences to leadership, and insights into their wisdom that can be shared with other women in the workforce who are also looking to carve out a path with their careers. First off, when we spoke earlier, many of you had shared some of your earlier roles, had shared some of your degrees. And what was interesting is many of you had studied or started out your careers in something that was different from where you are today. So obviously, you've had a career with your journey, or you've had a journey with your career. Tell us how did you start your career journey? And equally important, how did you continue to navigate and stay the course with your careers? Um, Yasmin, maybe you can share some of your thoughts there.
Sure, happy to. Well, I have a bachelor's and master's degree in electrical engineering. And in the early 90s, cell phones and cell towers were becoming a thing. So I decided to focus on electromagnetics and communications. Um, the cell towers are here in the U.S. and the jobs are going to be here in the U.S. I figured, and that's so I've been in the telecom industry for almost 30 years, and it's been never a dull moment. It's been really educational and huge growth opportunity for us all, learning and deploying things to help bridge conversations around the world, literally, and changing the culture around the world with airwaves and communication and cell phones. So it's been very rewarding and a growth opportunity for me.
Great, thank you for sharing. Diana, I saw you nodding your head there. How about you?
Well, my path's definitely a bit different. I don't really think of myself as a techie. So I have a degree in accounting and financial management, which was way more exciting than it sounded. And I'm actually a qualified accountant. And I just got kind of fed up of adding up stuff other people had actually done and decided I should go into sales. And so I shifted into sales, but initially selling financing. So I went to IBM and joined their global financing team, which is at the time was equivalent in size to one of the world's biggest banks. And so I kind of felt at least I was using my degree a little bit. I was helping to structure the really big sort of deals of that time, and then moved more into direct tech sales and spent a considerable amount of time as a client exec or account exec, global business manager, whatever different role title is given to sellers from time to time and place to place. And that's how I joined Microsoft about 8.5 years ago. And since then, I've been in a number of leadership roles. And then about 18 months ago, I decided to try and figure out what happened at the corporate headquarters, because I'd always been in the field, actually kind of on the pointy end of those sometimes strange decisions that come out from the corporate center. And so 18 months ago, I moved out to our HQ in Redmond, and now I'm leading strategy and operations in public sector. So yeah, quite a varied set of opportunities. And I think it's those kind of underlying core skills that are more important in my view than necessarily your degree or the specific expertise you might bring at a certain point in time, as long as you've got an appetite to learn.
Yeah. I think that probably resonates with a lot of people outside, but I saw more people nodding their head in the panel as well. Teacher, you were one of those. How about for you?
I actually studied computer science. I have my bachelor's in computer science, and my story is slightly different. I didn't quite start my career right after my school. I got married and then came to the United States back in late 90s, I would say, and started my graduate school. That's when I actually happened to get pregnant and had to go through health issues. I took a break of about 2 years. During that time, one thing I did to help stay relevant and stay connected to the industry is by continuous learning. Even though I couldn't go back to school full time, I actually took graduate courses at University of New Hampshire. I got some certification in Oracle, etc., to continue to develop my skills whenever I was ready to get back into the job market. Fortunately, it was during the dot-com boom years that I decided to get back into the job market, and I was able to find a job as a developer in a healthcare startup. Unfortunately, 2 years into that job, I actually lost my first job and I was back looking for an opportunity, and I happened to find an opening as a technical lead / developer at Capital One. And that's how I started my technology career in a bank, and it has been an amazing journey so far. I have the most fun solving real people's money problems through technology through my career. So that's been my journey.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't mind me double clicking a little bit more, you said something interesting there where you had spent some time taking a break before rejoining or joining into the workforce. What was that experience like? A, trying to, getting back into the workforce, and B, being a mother and a career professional.
If I were to go back, this is 20 plus years ago, I feel like I have no regrets being there as a mommy and took care of my daughter and was there for the formative years. I was fortunate enough to do that. At the same time, I always knew I wanted to get back into the workforce and build a career for myself and leverage my education, my background, etc. So, I never lost focus on that. I managed to keep that as my objective and goal, and prioritize that along with all the other responsibilities I've had as a mom, whether it was my certification or the courses I took, late in the evening. Obviously, my spouse was a very supportive husband, and he took care of the baby while I went to my classes late in the evening. So we managed it very effectively as a team.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know certainly it's not always one size fits all in terms of our experience. Stacy was nodding her head as you were talking, and I know Stacy has kids of her own. I'd be interested if you wouldn't mind sharing some of your perspective as both a professional as well as a mom trying to juggling the two.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a learning experience, right? Like I wouldn't say I had my kids young. My husband, my children are my number one priority. And so there's been a lot of changes in my life that have really brought that to the forefront. It's not, they're not under your roof for a very long time. And so you have to take advantage of the time that you do have with them every single day. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is it's okay to be that mom and put them first and be proud of everything that you do outside of your day-to-day job to be a better person all the way around, right? To be that well-rounded person. Not only am I a wife and a mom, but I also volunteer in our community. I coach. I'm on community boards. And I think doing that and showing my kids that you can have it all and you can do it all, it's just a balancing act.
Thank you, Stacy, for sharing that. I appreciate you guys sharing some of your experience and the lessons learned along the way. Tina, speaking of lessons, what are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way, and where do they come from? Perhaps Is there something that you would tell your younger self?
Oh yeah, there's lots of lessons that I've learned, Megan. Some of them I think resonate with the career path that many of the panelists have had. But first and foremost, I tell my younger self to enjoy, slow down and enjoy the process. This is a marathon and not a sprint, because I think when you're coming out of college, you have this, it's almost like a checklist of things that you want to accomplish. And
Mhm.
I was that person that was very driven, coming, one of the first in my family to graduate from college, and thinking I had to do everything in short order. And I realized, none of this is linear, right? Like your career journey is always, around and about, and all of those things. And I
The
think,
jungle gym.
right, it is. It really is a jungle gym. It's and a good one at that. When I look back on it, I have no regrets whatsoever about the different experiences that I've had. But I realize now, that it didn't come in the way that I thought it would. And I've gotten some great advice along the way from
Mhm.
mentors. Quite frankly, I've been
Yeah.
very lucky to have some great mentors in my life. One of the best, the best advice given to me by a mentor. Uh, it was a conversation we were having about my career journey, and I wanted to I was seeking a promotion, and he said to me, um, you know, I want you to understand something. Your career is by design, and it's your design. And he said to me, he said, how often do you get paid? And I paused and I thought, um, I get paid every 2 weeks. And he said, great. So, I want you to understand that your contractual obligation to your company and theirs to you is satisfied every 2 weeks. And I and I thought, what? What are you saying to me? And he's like, basically, every time you do the work for that 2 week period, you get paid for that work. And so he's like, so I want you to be more, free and understanding that you can do whatever you want. Like this is up to you. Every opportunity is yours to take. And you don't have to sit within these parameters. And that really changed a lot about how I think about the work that I do, the impact that I drive, all of it.
I love that. I love that advice. It certainly sounds like that was releasing some of the handcuffs, if you will, the mental handcuffs for you, and great advice for other women as well as they think about, are there boundaries, or are there, the sky's the limit that I can kind of reach for? What about you, Pri? How about you, and some of your journey?
I have no idea how I landed it up here. Like sometimes I'm amazed. I grew up in really small towns in India, and watching Oprah and thinking one day I'm going to be in her land. But no, I mean, the great thing is I had a lot of role models in tech around me, and that's very prevalent in India as well. Like all my family, everybody was in tech, and but I left home very early. I was sent to a boarding school when I was 15, and that kind of opened me up to a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different people. I realized the girl power or women power, like just having those really great conversations with other women at that point in time. And but I got my bachelor's in engineering. I came to the U.S. To get my master's, and I'm the only person in my family who's ever traveled outside of India or have gotten a master's. So I kind of took a leap of faith. I remember talking to my dad. He's like, are you sure about doing this? He's like, I have no idea what you're going to do. So I kind of took a leap of faith, and I was there was a lot of fear. And that's actually one lesson I've learned throughout this journey is whenever there's fear, I feel like there's personal growth happening. So I kind of like whenever I'm fearful, even like when I'm trying to take a stretch of a role or raising my hand for something, I'm always fearful. I deal with a lot of imposter syndrome, but I know at the back of that there's growth. So I'm like, I'm gonna leap forward. So that has been a huge lesson that I keep at the back pocket all the time. But I didn't actually. I got my engineering degree, but I also landed here in the middle of like a depression, like the financial crisis in 2008. So it was tough to get a job, and I tried so many techniques to get a job. It's crazy. I was very introverted, but I learned to network. because that's the only way I could get a job. So I had to push myself to change. So that was a huge learning. So life was just pushing me into like doing all the hard things and all the things that I didn't want to do. So it was crazy. So I think life takes its own course sometimes, and you have to let it. So that's been a huge lesson for me. But I kind of took a full circle with engineering. I started out with consulting and spent a lot of time with, in the consulting industry, and got into product management, and then I'm back in engineering. So I kind of took a full circle. So it's been a very interesting journey. But yeah, those are some of the big lessons. And also, I mean, I was sharing with you the other day is, as things change, my approach has always been to, bloom where you're planted. It's on my wall. It's really important to me. It's giving your best in whatever circumstance is thrown at you. Actually, the financial crisis taught me that. So I got really odd jobs. I was doing about 3 jobs in a day when I was in Cleveland. So I was in this new country, and I didn't have a job. So I had to like constantly ask people for jobs. So I remember going through a huge personal transformation during that process, which is still serving me. So all kinds of crisis is probably good.
The concept of leaning on or tapping into a network for others, how important is that? And for those who are maybe earlier on in their career trying to navigate it, how do you tap in and leverage a network or a mentor?
The biggest point about networking is that, it has to be organic and authentic. Even still, even as I'm, growing those networks. But I think the network is super important. It's something that, I value throughout my career. Like some people call it a board of directors, right? I have this group, a tight knit group of people that I rely on for career advice, or, just dialogue around like decisions that I'm making or anything like that. But that is really important. And you find within those networks sometimes that as people are engaging with you and understanding your thoughts, how you think, your ideas, etc., it can sometimes lead to a sponsorship, and some of those individuals end up recommending you for new roles or opportunities. So I think it's really important.
I think people around you are very, very important in your life. My opinion. The relationship you have with people like friends, family, and colleague can help you succeed. They can help you become a better executive, for example. They can help you increase your influence. They can help you get things done. They can support you whenever you need help. So building that network of relationships is hugely important. So just be genuinely interested in them, and t- talk to people in terms of what their interests are, and make them feel important, because then they reciprocate. I also would add a quote from Maya Angelou that I really like. I always share this with people. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
That human experience, very well said. As you said that, everyone was nodding their head in agreement. So we probably all have a little bit of story about that. That makes me think some of the human experience. A couple of you kind of talked about, in addition to the network, the role that a mentorship can play. Chitra or Diana, perhaps do you have some story that you can share about the value of mentorship?
For me, I've always actually struggled personally with finding strong mentors. And I think it's something that companies need to be a lot more intentional about, particularly if they want to develop talent. One thing I've seen recently is I've seen more intentionality around that. So where I've seen some senior female tech leaders joining the organization, for example, they've been intentionally paired with another female tech leader. And I think that makes a big difference, particularly when you're joining a new organization and you're trying to figure out what can feel like complete chaos because it operates in a way that you don't know, you don't understand, you don't have the network. And the thing that really resonated with me from what Pri was saying was the imposter syndrome piece. Mm-hmm. And that, we grow most through challenge, but that sometimes that is a really difficult thing to embrace. And I think in my experience, when you look at the way men and women approach, say, new jobs, there's research, and seeing as what is it? I'll make a number up. 75% of all statistics are made up on the spot. But there's some very high percentage where if there's a list of 10 qualities you need for a job, a guy will say, I've got 2 of them, I'll rock it. And a woman will say, there's 2 I'm not too sure about, so I won't apply for it. And I think that's where that imposter syndrome comes into how can male allies help in the workplace. And it's not only helping women to recognize the 8 things that they're amazing at, but it's recognizing that when they're interviewing and when they're going out to seek applicants for roles, the language they use, the questions they ask, and getting underneath the covers is the thing that really matters. Because if you use aggressive language in your job adverts, you'll get a certain type of applicant. If you use language about collaboration and about empathy and about teams, you'll get a lot more female applicants. So, I think making sure that we're helping everybody be more successful starts right from what language am I using in the job descriptions? Is it inclusive language? And then through the process, and then once you've got people in your team, finding what they're really good at and pulling that out rather than, it's almost like the squeaky wheel gets most oil syndrome otherwise, where it's the person jumps up and down and says, me, I've got that skill set. And actually the reality is, no, that person next to you actually has the skill set we need. So I think that's a really important thing to think about as we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you picked up on that because, everyone's nodding. We've probably felt that to a degree ourselves or seen that elsewhere. And it's one of those things where you probably have to, to your point, Diana, need to be deliberate and conscious about on the daily, right?
Yeah, what Diana said very much resonated with me. And one of the advices I've gotten early in my career from one of the mentors really helped me think about this imposter syndrome. She said, own your seat. You are in that position because you deserve it, right? Silence the nagging you behind the scenes saying you're not qualified or you're uncertain about your skills, etc. So owning your seat and reassuring yourself and silencing that voice within you about insecurities is one of the really valuable advice I have received early on in my career.
Yeah.
To play on that, one of the things that I've always struggled with is the what if abyss. As you are in your head and having those conversations of I can't or I'm not qualified, it's that what if abyss. Don't go there. Stop yourself, recognize it, and implant. I'm strong. I'm brilliant. I deserve this. I belong. Yeah. Those are key things that I've had to learn as you self-reflect, you grow, but we are also in self-reflection, we can bring out the negative voice.
I think were you also wanting to chime in on that as well?
Yeah, when Diana, it really resonated because I remember like going for a role and, I was 3 months into the new role and I just constantly felt like I should be delivering more value. And I remember like, telling my manager, or he's a great mentor to me. And he's like, give up on that imposter syndrome shit. Like he knew it. And I feel like that's a great male ally, right? Like it was like, I know what you're going through. And just get it out of the way. So it really resonated with me because, sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for the work we do. And that's one of the actually things I would tell my younger self, like don't value everything that you do, like don't undervalue. And I remember there was a phase in my life where I would kind of self-deprecate or just like make fun of the things I do, and I've seen a lot of my friends do that, and I think words have worth, and I think we need to change that language sometimes.
Yeah. It's important that we support ourselves. It's important for women to be supporting women. You also mentioned having a male support you, a male colleague support you as well. On that note, what is it in your observations? What advice do we have for male colleagues or male leaders that they could do better or differently in order to also enable and support women in the workforce?
I'm sure we all have opinions to jump in here. one of the things, help break stereotypes. Sometimes our strength and our passion can come across and be interpreted in a negative light. And instead of allowing maybe that in a meeting or in a group setting to just kind of resonate of seeing body language, speak up and say, that's awesome. I love your approach. I think that that's a great idea. Being supportive on a day-to-day basis. I loved what Diana said about how, you change your job descriptions from the time that you are gathering applicants. But I do think it's important that there's that lightness, not all the time, but every so often to have that extra support from a male figure. I too have a colleague in my life that supports me, male colleague that supports me every day. He'll give me some affirmations when I need them if I'm down on myself. So those are things that I think are key in helping really level the playing field when you think about males helping women out in the workplace.
Yeah, I agree with Stacy, and I think the key is listening, right? I think what we need and want mostly from our male counterparts is for them to listen and to understand and seek to understand rather than be understood, right? Which is an old saying, but I think it's very true. When it comes to our lived experiences, they're very different, and standing in the gap, right? Stacy is absolutely correct about if we portray or do some of the same things that our male counterparts do, it's taken in a very different light, particularly for me as a Black woman, right? Like we all know the adage about the angry Black woman. But I've been fortunate to have some very strong male mentors, leaders, etc. that I've worked for. I currently work for a great one now, and I think the characteristic that I love the most about him is that he listens. He actually listens, and will stand in the gap. I feel comfortable. There's a trust there that I can say. I can tell him when I need his help and when I don't. And I think that's really important.
I think it's also on us as women to invest, like as we identify those allies who seem to be interested in investing in us. I think we women also have to take that step forward to invest in that. So I think it's kind of a two-way. I completely agree. Like, small little things. Like the other day I saw a colleague asking a kind of a new person who joined the company, ask her to come provide her opinion when she was very quiet, and that was so empowering. And I think it's going to change her. I saw kind of her attitude change completely. And I think small little things have a huge impact. So I think we all can make a difference.
Another thing I would add on the male colleague piece is, as a mom, I've struggled at times, several times, feeling guilty, right? Like, I need to go do X, Y, and Z. I need to take my kid to the doctor. I need to go pick them up from school. I need to, daycare, whatever it may have been throughout the years. And then you have your male counterpart doing those things, and people are fawning over them and saying, well, that he's such a great dad. And, it's having people stand up and feel okay. Like, hey, look at what we're doing. We're balancing a professional career and taking care of our homes, and not being ashamed of that, I think, is important. And having male leaders praise that from time to time and acknowledge it, I think, is a good thing. It doesn't have to be again, fawning over the situation, but as Tina said, stepping into that gap in support of that.
Yeah, and I think it's stepping in and making sure that when behaviors are observed that aren't inclusive, that they're nipped in the bud. But it's things like, who is it who takes notes in your meeting, generally speaking? Who gets coffees? Mm-hmm. Who arranges the night out for the team to go for drinks? Because often that will be the woman. And is that because that person actually genuinely is, team social secretary, because that's what I want to be? Or is that because that defaults to the women in the group? And making conscious choices to be inclusive and to spot when those things are happening and take action appropriately, I think is important. And I think, to Bree's point, we can't just leave it to the guys to do that. We as as successful, as strong women, as leaders in our organizations have to do it, but it can be hard at times.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. If you're observing some of that behavior, I think it's important to call out the behavior real time so people can reflect back on it, and we can do it in a respectful way so that it just raises the mirror to help people see some of those blind spots. It certainly reminds me of a time I recall with there was a male leader who was in the habit of calling me sweetheart. You know, if I chimed in with something, it was thank you, sweetheart. I didn't see any male colleagues have also been called sweetheart, but I think what was positive from that is he was receptive to some of the feedback. And so having that conversation separately and articulating some of the impact on calling me sweetheart and the impression it gave others in the room, I think it resonated and that never happened again. But had I kept it to myself, I would have been continued to be called sweetheart. And who knows how many other women would have been called sweetheart as well. Right. Well,
Nathan, I'm
great.
curious, how did you find the courage to actually confront that person, given that
Yeah.
they were saying something like that to you?
You know, it took me a bit, not gonna lie. It wasn't as though immediately I responded because there was that part of that fear factor, the imposter syndrome of is this going to get me fired? Are they going to take it well? So you go through some of that self conversation. And then at the end of the day, I just thought about some of the mentors that I've had along the way, either at university or in my career, who's always trying to encourage me to speak your voice. And at the end of the day, if you have the feedback, it's their choice to take the feedback or not, but it's not a reflection of you. You have to at least take the chance. Um, Otherwise, keeping it in is going to discourage you more than not saying anything at all. So I took that little bit of leap of faith. And once I did that, I think it really opened more of the doors to speak up more and more in other situations. But I had to kind of release my own handcuffs and take that leap the first time, if you will. Yeah. It does have me wondering, shifting gears a little bit about women in technology, where we make up about 25% of the workforce. What can we do to encourage women, more women or girls, to either A, stay the course or try out STEM if they want to get into a technical role, or to stay the course in what may be a male dominated workforce?
Starts early, right? Is changing the conversation of hard things being done only by men, easier things by women. Like there's that subconscious thing that is like in small things in the society, even within our families sometimes, is how do we start changing kind of that DNA of how we talk about, if something's broken, the boy is going to fix it, for example, right? So I think that needs to happen. I think more women, more girls need to be introduced to STEM sooner. And I think there needs to be constant encouragement. I think we all, well, as you can see, like we all have imposter syndrome. I don't know if there is millions of years of some types of subliminal feeling that's, is in us. But I think girls deal with that too. Like, I think it's empowering them at a very early age. And I think that's when it starts. That's when it begins. That's when we form a lot of our beliefs. And if we can start changing that, a lot of my thought goes to that. And of course, I think about childcare a lot and motherhood a lot. Taking on the other spectrum is it's extremely hard in the first few months after you have had a baby, right? And how do we support mothers, new mothers, and fathers through that process? I think, as I was reading statistics on how many women kind of fell out of the workforce during the pandemic, largely because of childcare. I think we need to figure out some innovative thinking around, how do we support mothers to continue to remain in tech or in any other industry, but largely in tech also, is how we support them through that childcare process.
Sometimes it's two steps forwards, one step back. And with the pandemic, we are seeing increasing numbers of professional women stepping back from the workforce. And I don't think that's unique to the US, but globally, you're seeing that as well. And certainly, I think there are statistics to prove it. And besides the statistics and it being good for business, it's just good for society to have that diversity in the workforce. I think to that point, Chitra and Stacy, as mothers and women in the workforce, any quick nuggets or thoughts on, perhaps one or two things that we could do, I think to Pri's point, to support women and help them stay in the workforce during these times?
Yeah, I would say pay it forward. We being the women in technology and in leadership roles, make mentoring as part of the job. Identify women who need support, provide mentorship, provide whatever resources they need in order to be successful is something we all can actually consciously do every single day as part of our jobs.
There was a period of a decade where almost all my paycheck was going towards either daycare or Montessori school or whatever. I kept saying to myself, these days will pass, just stick with it. It's okay that you're paying for daycare. And eventually your income will grow, your position will grow, and you'll get past this. And sure enough, it has been rewarded many times over. So just kind of think along the longer term is the advice I would give to the parents.
I think the pandemic really changed a lot of viewpoints. If I was to look at what this last 15 or 12 months, I guess, has looked like for all of us, there has been that need to adapt, right? We as women in leadership roles in technology, one of the biggest takeaways is change is inevitable. And the pandemic has really pushed us into that. And so balancing that act of being a mom, being a teacher, being the wife, and being a professional, all while stuck at home, it weighs on you. You need to make sure you find an outlet for yourself. That is the one takeaway from this pandemic that I will absolutely say that I learned is taking that extra time for yourself, doing 30 minutes, an hour of whatever you need to do to find your own space to make sure that you continue to invest in your own mental and physical health is extremely important.
What advice would you have for other up and coming women who aspire to be in a leadership role? What advice can you share and impart for them who are trying to navigate their careers?
Leadership advice. I think leadership is not a title. Anybody can be a leader. You just have to have a vision, put your vision into words. And in order to be a leader, you need what? You need followers. You need people to raise their hands and say, I'm willing to follow your vision. And how can you do that? You say, well, you can be a problem solver. You can ask executives, how can I help? You can look for things that are not being done, look for opportunities, and volunteer to take them on. And along the way, you will find your obsession, and people would love to help you, and they will ask to come and help you and get things done.
Be an active listener. Don't be thinking about what your response is going to be. You may feel a certain way about a topic, but listen, be empathetic. But no, at the end of the day, you do have a job to do. And so there's a balancing act between that. But listening, I think, is key with any true leader.
Okay, there are 4 things for me. Leadership is being authentic. Leadership is, doing everything with integrity, taking utmost accountability, and focus on results. When I say results, it is results to your organization, bringing results to your people. That's just a simple 4 words philosophy that I have personally as a leader.
We talk a lot in Microsoft about clarity, energy, and success. So driving clarity for the team around you, so to avoid that sort of chaotic, I don't really know where I'm going, What's the vision? Are we all in this together? That allows you to get through, I think, the inevitable tough times that every project, every team, every organization goes through, and bringing a real positive energy to that. And I think people around, they know, I mean, we all know there are people in our lives who are energy suckers, and you don't want to spend time with those people. You see their phone, name flash on the phone, and you're like, do I have it in me today to answer that or not? So for me, there's something about bringing that real positive energy and finding, even in those moments of stress, the things that we can learn, the opportunity, or but bringing the authenticity that Chitra talked about, not trying to pretend that the world is full of rainbows and unicorns when clearly we're downsizing or we're stopping a project that people have spent a long time on. That you face those things with authenticity and transparency, but you bring energy to the team to how they work their way through them, and that brings you to success. So for me, it's really people focused, helping the team to drive through challenges by providing those things, clarity and energy.
There's often this misconception that leadership is synonymous with yielding power. And I think that is the opposite of what it is, actually. I think, Chitra talked a little bit about who you are, those 4 attributes of who a leader is. And Yasmin talked about how a leader, manages, as well as Diana. And the important thing for me and what I've learned about leadership is that, leadership is about humility. It is really about stepping back, asking the right questions. Stacey mentioned listening, right? All of those things are really critical to leadership, and it's more about being able to follow versus lead. And in following, that's the listening part, the active listening, being able to engage people properly. It's not about doing everything, because you can't do everything, and it's certainly not about yielding power. It is really about being, authentic and true to yourself.
How about you, Pri?
Yeah, I mean, everybody was right on. I think self-awareness, I see that as kind of so core to a leader. And we really need, I mean, Diana talked about energy, like that balance of competence and likability is key. We can be highly competent, but could be a terrible leader. So I think we don't give as much credit to energy and the energy that you bring to a team, to a culture, to an organization. I think that's so key. So I think, that and authenticity, I mean, it goes back to like, people see through that, right? Like it's so easy to cut through anything fake. So I think all of those, and again, competence is of course there, but in the light of everything else, it just seems like it's a good glue, but there's so many other things that are more people focused and, energy focused, so to speak.
Yeah. I want to thank everyone again for your time. This was incredible. I love the conversation. I'm sure we could have gone on for many more hours, and we will have a chance to do that again in the future. But I want to thank you guys for carving out time out of your very, very busy days to just chat with us as women professionals and leaders that are well respected in the industry. I think the insights and the truths that you guys spoke will be incredibly useful for other women in the workforce and the up and coming. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.